Your generous support makes this ministry possible. Thank you.
Amen. We are beginning the Judean ministry. Remember the importance of that specialized ministry. A lot of big stuff went on there, where the Lord is leading them out of Galilee north into Tyre and Sidon, the Syrophoenician area, touches some Gentile people, does some totally gracious miracles on people that he had not come to minister to at that particular time. And then the great confession of Peter, the first mention of the church, the first clear teaching that he was going to die, the revelation and transfiguration of what the kingdom is going to be like, the private teaching to his disciples as to how to take care of sin in the church. That's all important stuff in this parenthetical period. Common to this section is they couldn't understand it. It's introduced by that miracle of a man seeing something, a blind man, but not seeing it well. He knew it was there, but couldn't figure out what exactly it was. That's what experience the disciples are having now. The Lord tells the Transfiguration 3, don't tell anybody about it until later. A couple times we read, this was hidden from them so that they could not understand, and they were afraid to ask questions. Now that's important. Why is that inability to understand about the church, the death, the resurrection, the kingdom in that little microcosm on Transfiguration? Why is it so important that they really didn't understand that yet? Why is that important for them?
Because they were going to go preach the kingdom.
Exactly. That is a critical answer. They were going to go and preach the kingdom again in Judea and in Perea. They think that way all the way up to the door of Jerusalem as the last week comes. And Jesus will tell them a parable because they supposed that the kingdom of God was going to appear immediately. And when we get into Tuesday of Passion Week, he takes the offer away from the nation of Israel. Get that concept clear. It was hidden from them. These things that jumped the kingdom to the present day, to the church age, these things are hidden from them, lest they should understand, and then fizzle out in the next two provinces to be evangelized. It's amazing the way God works out his purposes in all of this. And we then go to the Judean ministry. Now, the Judean ministry, if you take your charts, the Judean ministry from the first thing all the way down to the parable of the Good Shepherd is recorded only in John. It's only in John. And then the next segment that goes from the sending out of the 70 to the return of the 70 is recorded mainly in Luke, a little in a few other places, but mainly in Luke. And then at the end, there's one more incident that is in John. Now, only recently did I understand the jump. You keep putting pieces together. It's kind of a complicated thing to get all this to harmonize, you know. I noticed in the John account that all that John writes in this Judean ministry takes place in the city of Jerusalem. All that Luke contributes from the sending out of the 70 to the return of the 70 takes place outside of Jerusalem in the province of Judea. So I have divided it consequently into the urban ministry and the suburban ministry. And that keeps it straight in our thinking. In the suburban ministry, he repeats a lot of what he had spoken in the Galilean ministry. Things from the Sermon on the Mount show up. He again teaches them how to pray. And it's a lot of the same stuff, but in a different setting with different people in the towns and villages of Judea. So you have this concentrated time in Jerusalem. John records that. This is where some of the really big miracles take place, the healing of the man born blind, the contest with the Pharisees over the adulterous woman, the Good Shepherd discourse. That's all in Jerusalem. But then he goes out into the suburbs, and there it's not as theologically oriented. This is a section where Jesus comes into contact day after day with the leadership of Israel. He's right under their collective noses as they're meeting in the Sanhedrin. And there's all sorts of tension that is going on during this time. He's right in their face. We will notice as he starts out the discussion that he will say something like this. I'm going to go where I was. I'm speaking concerning the one who sent me. And he's giving hints about his heavenly origin and being sent by the Father. He doesn't mention that for a while, but he keeps leading them on. He wants to get in this Father battle with them. Let me just show you how that works out on a couple of the pages. It's hilarious when you see the way the Lord draws them into the discussion. Look quickly at page 126. We'll go to the beginning in a minute. After introducing it without mentioning the Father's name, he finally says in verse 18 on 126, if I bear witness to myself, my witness is not true. And they start to question him. And he says in verse 18, Father. Verse 19, Father, Father. And then on page 127, verse 28, Father. Verse 38, Father. 39, Father. 41, Father. Father again. Then turn the page, and this gets unbelievable. On 128, verse 42, Father. 44, Father, Father. 44, Father. Verse 49, Father. Verse 52, Father. 54, Father. And then all the pronouns, him. Who's he talking about? Now, what was one of the early things that upset? He forgave sin. He called God his Father, making himself equal to God. And when he comes up into Jerusalem now to be where the Sanhedrin is, where the bad shepherds were, he's going to be the good shepherd, describe himself as a good shepherd, talk about his father, and say to them, you are of your father the devil. This father thing is what he's after, which is the one who sent him. He has come to do his Father's will. And that whole thing is bringing this deity question right to them. And they get infuriated over it. This is a fun section, the Judean section. And it's introduced in a very interesting way. He sets his face to go to Jerusalem on page 121. Going up to the city of Jerusalem. This is the Judean ministry. Jerusalem is in the province of Judea. This is the heart and soul of Judaism. He set his face to go to Jerusalem. Now the feast of the Jews was at hand. So his brothers said to him, you better be going up to Judea. Leave here and go to Judea, that your disciples may see the works you are doing. No man works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, not up here in Galilee, show yourself to the world. And then John writes in his gospel, for even his brothers did not believe in him. We know of two of those brothers. They later became believers, James and Jude. James presided at the Jerusalem Council in Acts 15 and wrote the epistle. Jude wrote that very short epistle. They became believers, but they weren't believers yet. By Pentecost, they were believers. On the other side of the resurrection, they became believers. They are meeting with Mary and the other disciples in the upper room in Pentecost. It looks like the resurrection convinced them of the deity of their brother. You would think they'd have picked that up earlier. This is of great encouragement to any of you who have siblings your own age who are not believers. Any of you have brothers and sisters in your family that are not believers? Now that's an amazing thing. Do you realize? I'll ask Ann, do any of you? I saw one hand. It is utterly amazing the strength of a Christian family and the passing on of salvation. It's always 80, 90%. Every class is that way. It's exceptional. It's wonderful. God relates to us on a family level. Sometimes it takes some time. It took more time with James and Jude than I would have expected. Don't you think? Don't you think by the time you're 30 or in the 20s, which they probably were, Jesus being the firstborn, that you'd have figured out this kid living with us is different from everybody else. But they didn't figure it out. God's time of salvation is his business. And it's not that Jesus wasn't a good witness. Do you think Jesus was a good witness? I think he was. How do you think he'd do in Christian service here? He'd be great. He'd know exactly what to say, how to act, how to respond. Never lost it. Always right. Always the right personality. Always the right way of handling it. But even his brothers didn't believe, and they said, and look what he says to them: "My time has not come." Jesus says to his brothers, "Your time's always here. The world cannot hate you. It hates me. Why couldn't it hate them? They're of the world. Can't hate you. You're one of them. But it hates me because I testify of it that its works are evil." That must have been an interesting thing, what the neighborhood thought about in Nazareth, about the Holy Family, where they see James and Jude and the others sneaking into the bad movies. Huh? You're of the world. They don't hate you. They welcome you. They hate me. That must have been a doozy of a life. There's some of the questions that we may be able to ask of Jesus later, or James and Jude. I want to be fun to say, hey, I read about this. I read your book later, but what were you like in your teenage years with Jesus? Won't that be a fun discussion in heaven? How come your brother said you're of the world, and the world loves you, and it hates him? What was going on? And they probably say, we were driving our parents crazy. It's the truth. Just think about some of these things. Look what Jesus does. Go to the feast yourselves. Were they going up to the feast? Yeah, they were going up the feast according to custom. They went on ahead of Jesus with the rest of the family. That says something about emptiness of religion. They're mocking Jesus, who's not going up, and they're going to go up to the feast. So they go up on their own with the whole family. They were Orthodox Jews, maintaining orthodoxy, all the while mocking Christ. Whoa. So saying, he remained in Galilee. Now look what Jesus said. I am not going up to the feast. Now you're going to have the shock of your life when you turn the page. After his brothers had gone up to the feast, he also went up. I fooled them. I'm not going up to the feast. Go up by yourselves. So then he goes up. Does that trouble any of you? If a person says, I'm not going to the feast, and then he goes to the feast, wouldn't we call that a lie? So I have to look at verse 10 and say, oh, how's this work? Is anything in verse 10 that can rescue me from thinking that Jesus told an untruth when he said, I'm not going up to the feast? There is some help here. See if you can find it.
Was there a little bit of a time gap?
Yeah. A little bit. He went up late. So you could say, I'm not going up on time, because he arrives at the middle of the feast. That's a good observation. So it could be a time gap.
It says in verse 9, my time is not yet come.
I'm sorry?
It says in verse 9, my time is not yet come to go up to the feast. So, the time gap.
Yeah, the time gap. Is there anything else? Yeah, I think that's a very good observation. Not publicly. They had said, go up to the feast and make a big splash. Jesus says, I'm not going up that way. I'm going up privately. That's what this verse is telling us. He went up in private. He even took the private route up. What is the private route? Samaria. The public route would have been to the road next to the River Jordan in the valley area, and then up the Jericho road that leads up to Jerusalem. That's the public road. The private road is through the hill country of Samaria and Judea. That's what he did when he fled Jerusalem. You remember when they had arrested John? He left through the private route, not the public route. And he comes in it. Now, we have a little different. How's he done in Samaria so far, when he did venture into Samaria? He did well. A Samaritan woman, a lot of people get saved. Another time he's there, they respond to him. Look what happens this time. He sent messengers ahead of him who went and entered the village of the Samaritans to make ready for him, but the people would not receive him. Well, what's going on here? Again, the explanation is there. Because he was in a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. He's one of these Orthodox Jews. We don't want to deal with them. You know, if he's a leper in Samaria, we'll talk to them. Or if they're asking us for a drink of water, that's one thing. But to say, I am a Jew going on to Jerusalem, we don't have any dealings with those kind of Orthodox people. And then in verse 54, we have one of those revelations of the other side of the character of some of our disciples, and especially John, the disciple of love. I love this passage. When his disciples, James and John, these were the guys who were on Transfiguration, remember, saw this rejection by the Samaritan, they said, Lord, do you want us to bid fire come down from heaven and consume them? Isn't that a neat picture? Would you like to be a disciple? You work a miracle, and if they don't like it, well, it's the end of there you go. Sons of thunder, these two are called. Do you see the Apostle John as that kind of a person? A son of thunder. Is that the picture you have of John? The picture you have of John is he's a sweet old guy. Well, by the time he got old, he was a sweet old guy. But growing up, he was a son of thunder. And if somebody opposed the true and living God, Lord Jesus, kaboom! Kill him! Whoa. He turned and rebuked them. And they went and went to another village going through Samaria. John would become very gentle by the time it's all over. As they were going along the road, a man said, people are coming up as Jesus, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus says, no place to follow me. Foxes have holes, the birds of the air have nests. Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. This is the verse. Everybody picks this one up, and we write hymns about it. Even good theologians make mistakes here. John Nelson Darby, one of the greatest of theologians, wrote a hymn that we sing on occasion, less and less, but a hymn nonetheless, where he wandered as a homeless stranger in this world his hands had made. And it's based on this verse. Foxes have their holes and birds of the air have nests. Son of Man never has a home. Nowhere to lay his head. And this is a picture most people have of Jesus and the disciples. That he had a continual knapsack. He always had a bedroll. The 12 of them are wandering around Palestine with no place to stay. Their favorite song is a song that was a big hit when I was your age. Can you imagine? The Happy Wanderer. Have you ever heard it? I love to go a-wandering, Valderie, Valdera, Valderie, Valdera. You know, we're wandering. It's like a yodeling song from Switzerland. I'm a wanderer with my knapsack. It was in the days of the hippies where they didn't live any place, you know. I wander around with a knapsack on my back. And that's what people think of Jesus. Isn't that the picture you had of Jesus? He's always out there in the fields walking around with his 12. Now, let's get the addresses of Jesus straight again. If you wanted to send them a welcome to the world, it's a boy card, where would you send that? Bethlehem. Next couple of years, where would you send it? Egypt. After that, until he was 30, where would you send it? And after he leaves Nazareth for his Galilean ministry, where would you send it? Now, where would you send it in his Judean ministry? We had mentioned that. He stays with people in Judea. You know who he stays with? Reach way back to the opening class. Who's he stay with when he visits up in Judea? Who? Lazarus is right. Mary and Martha and Lazarus. That's where he would stay. And we see him doing that. We see him doing that right up until the end. On Sunday when he goes into Jerusalem, he looks around and goes out to the home of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. That was home there. And that's where he'll end. That will be his last address. Now, he's in between Capernaum and Bethany right now. He doesn't have a home right now. He's traveling. And that's why I would say it. I'm not, but in a couple days he would be in Judea. And he'd be in the place where he would stay. And when he'd go over into Perea later, they'd send messages to him. Lazarus is sick, come back, and he'll come back after a delay. So it's legitimate for him to say this now, but it's because he's in transition. He's got all his stuff on his back. They had just gone through Capernaum and picked up what they wanted to take to Judea. The lease was over in Capernaum. Now they're on their way to Judea. They'll be staying with Mary and Martha and Lazarus. We'll see him there. So hence he can say this, and legitimately so. To another he said, follow me. He said, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus gives this tough answer. Leave the dead to bury their own dead. But as for you, go and proclaim the kingdom of God. Now, the dead had not died. He is saying, let me take care of my parental responsibilities, and then I'll follow you. See, there was a delay. The other one, it's a closer setting. I will follow you, Lord, but let me first say farewell to those at my home. No, don't turn back. He'll say, no one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. Make a decision. You got to make a decision now. And what Jesus is doing is saying, I'm drawing a line in the sand now. If you cross it, you're with me. If not, you're not. And there is that choice to be made. It's a choice we all make. It's a present yourself choice, to refer to last week's message. So he makes his way up to Jerusalem. Look what happens now. The Jews were looking for him at the feast. Remember, he said, I'm not going up right away. I'm not going up publicly. He's going to kind of sneak into Jerusalem. Well, here he comes. They were looking for him at the feast and saying, where is he? And there was much muttering about him among the people. Some said he's a good man. Others said, no, he's leading the people astray. Now, muttering is a great word. Do you like that word? And mutter, mutter, mutter. That's what was going on. Here's a good. Yet for fear of the Jews, nobody would say, this is what I really think about him. Because the Jews, the Sanhedrin, are after him. About the middle of the feast, as you see, he went up late. For those of you who like to arrive at church late, Jesus did it too. He went up into the temple and taught. About the middle of the feast he was there. The Jews marveled at it, saying, here, circle this verse. This is a student's verse. How is it that this man has learning when he has never studied? Isn't that a great verse? Now, how come he was so learned, having never gone to the schools of the rabbi? Because he was the rabbi. You know, he's the teacher. He is God. It is a distinct advantage when studying to not only have a very keen human mind, but to possess full deity at the same time, you know. And I understand about, as best we can, about how he did not make use of his omni-attributes, but they were saying, what they were really saying, he never went to the school of Gamaliel. He never studied under any rabbi. How does he speak so authoritatively? So Jesus starts. Now look what he does. Remember the Father thing? He is setting them up. My teaching is not mine, but his who sent me. Who is he who sent him? His Father. And they go, but he doesn't use the word Father yet. He doesn't use it until well into the discussion. And then he just presses the Father button, and it's every other word, you know. The teaching is not mine, but his who sent me. If any man's will is to do his will, who's his? He shall know whether the teaching is from God or not, or whether I'm speaking with my own authority. Jesus says in verse 19, did not Moses give you the law? Yet none of you keeps the law. Oh! Isn't that a charge to make? Is Jesus loaded for bear? He is ready to go with these guys, and he really will. Why do you seek to kill me? Oh, they said, you have a demon. Who's seeking to kill you? Where are they seeking to kill him? From the time he made himself equal to God, calling God his Father, they sought a way to kill him. He went right for the jugular. You guys are plotting my death. He had already talked about what they were going to do. What did he say about these people? These very people he's talking to, the scribes and the Pharisees and the high priest, will put me to death. I'll be crucified. On the third day I'll be raised. He knew what he was talking about. You seek to kill me. I've told my disciples already, but they can't understand it because, you know the disciples. Yeah. You seek to kill me. They said, you have a demon. Who's seeking to kill you? Were they seeking to kill him? Yes. Now, you have something very interesting here. If you ever catch a person in a contradiction, there are numerous ways to respond. When you're caught in what you have said, and it's a bad thing to have said, it's a wrong thing, or it's going to be embarrassing, as in this instance, how can you handle that? What can you say? What can you say to a child? You're seeking to kill me. They got real angry. You're crazy. You have a demon. Nobody's seeking to kill you. Was anybody seeking to kill him? Yes, they were. That's a lie. So that's one way of denying it. What's another way of denying it? You do something like this. You'll run into this all the time. You remember the confronting one another in sin thing that we just dealt with? This is how it's handled. I didn't really mean that. Have you ever met anybody that said that in explaining what they had said? I didn't mean that. Or, you misunderstood me. Or, that's not true, I didn't say it, even though they did say it. That's what they said. The final statement is, if you quote me, I'll deny it. That's what they're doing. You see, there are all these ways of handling a statement that's got you caught. I didn't mean it. You misunderstood me. I didn't say it. You're lying. If you quote me, I'll deny it. You hear that all the time in politics. You hear it plenty in the church. You hear it plenty in your interaction with one another. Oh, I didn't mean that. Most every time we say I didn't mean it, it's not the truth. We really did mean it. The problem is it got out of our mouth before we can control it. And you have to back off. I didn't mean that. You misunderstood me. No, you meant it, and I understand you totally. That's really the truth of it. Yes, Jesus says you did try to kill me. And then he brings up the next big controversial issue. I did one deed, and you all marvel at it. Moses gave you circumcision, and so on. Verse 23, if on the Sabbath a man receives circumcision, so the law of Moses may not be broken, are you angry with me because on the Sabbath I made a man's whole body well? He brings up the Sabbath day. Look what he's doing. Is he leading for an argument? Why would he be doing that? Why is he setting them up for a major league confrontation? Every one of the things he does flies right in the teeth of the Sanhedrin. He'll forgive a woman in adultery that they had trapped to trap Jesus. He'll heal a man born blind, and that man will go to them and say, do you want to become disciples of Jesus too? This is amazing. This is the second time I've told you what he did. Why is Jesus doing this? Why is he being so hard? Leading into this confrontation. Why? Can you help me? Why would you ever be so harsh? calculate to bring confrontation. Why did he do things on the Sabbath day?
He knew he had to get them upset to crucify.
So he could be crucified? Well, certainly that's the big plan. To clear up misconceptions. This is right. You got to get it on the table. Finally face the facts. You have tried to kill me. You understand I make myself equal to God. You understand the logic of all the Sabbath day arguments. You understand the phoniness of your religion. I want you to face that. And sometimes you have to be tough with people to face that. Vic, people were tough with you, weren't they? Isn't that the truth? They kept talking to you, talking to you, talking to you. Get saved, get on the way, get on the mass. Didn't that happen? Gotta happen. Well, I'm a pretty good guy. No, you're not a pretty good guy. This is all to break through all this tradition and the blindness that they had. I mean, we can see it so clearly. These guys, what's going on here? Well, Jesus is breaking through. That was the whole reason. He did this Sabbath day stuff and had the automatic Sabbath arguments in hand to break through the external, just like his brothers. Go up to the feast. They were unbelievers, but they went up to the feast. Can you imagine? And he's got to break through that. He's not doing this just to win an argument. He will do that. It certainly will lead to his crucifixion. And with this confrontation in verse 25, some of the people of Jerusalem therefore said, "Isn't this the man whom they seek to kill?" They knew they were trying to kill him. And here he's speaking openly. Do you see what pressure he's putting on the Sanhedrin? They're trying to kill him. Everybody knows it. They all know that they've already invented the Beelzebub theory to explain his miracles. And yet he's in the temple every day, right under the throne of the Sanhedrin, or the judgment seat of the Sanhedrin. Can you imagine that? And it's saying, do they really believe? They didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to do. So Jesus proclaimed, as he taught in the temple, "You know me and you know where I come from. I have not come of my own accord. He who sent me is true, and him you do not know. I know him. I came from him, and he sent me." They sought to arrest him. No one laid hands on him because his hour had not yet come. Isn't that neat? This is the Sanhedrin seeking to arrest them. And the debate is, if the Messiah comes, is he going to do any more miracles than this person has done? The answer to that is no, he can't. The Pharisees heard the crowds muttering. Okay, everybody mutter. Good, you can still do that. I'm proud of you. Through your drowsy eyes and weariness, you can still mutter. I'm happy for that. Okay? They were muttering. And the priest said, "This is it. We're done with this." They send officers to arrest him. Okay. Out come the temple police under the jurisdiction of the Sanhedrin, and they're going to arrest him. And Jesus says, "I'm going to go away soon. I'm going to depart altogether." Skip that little section. The last day of the feast, I mean, they've sent out to arrest him, and it comes to be the last day of the feast. And there are two ceremonies on the last day of the feast, the water pouring ceremony and the lamp lighting ceremony. We'll see both of those. He cries out, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me." Sounds like the Samaritan woman story again. And when everybody heard it, they said, "This got to be the Christ." And no. And the one said, "No, he's great. Doesn't come from Galilee. It comes from Bethlehem." Somebody should have said, "Guess what? He came from Bethlehem." So there's this division among the people over him. Some of them wanted to arrest him. No one laid hands on him. So he's there preaching. The Sanhedrin sent out the officers to arrest him. He preaches on. They don't know what to do. Now they come back. I love this paragraph, 117, top of the page. Officers then went back to chief priests and Pharisees, who said to them, "Where's the prisoner? Why didn't you bring him?" How's this for an answer? No man ever spoke like this man. They went to arrest him, And he's speaking like he did, I come from heaven, you don't, and all the rest of it. And they wouldn't arrest him. No man ever spoke to the Pharisees. Now, this is an important little thing, because we understand here what in the wide world was going on in the brains of the Sanhedrin. Are you led astray also, you also? Now, let me skip verse 48. Here it is. Have any of the authorities of the Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd, who do not know the law, are accursed. What's the significance of that statement? This crowd that does not know the law are accursed. What are the Sanhedrin saying there?
Would be like almost some things, I don't know about possessed, but I don't know how to explain it.
Keep trying. What are they saying about the hoi polloi, you can't say that of Jews, but the hoi polloi of Judaism? What are they saying about those people? The common folk are stupid. That's what the shepherds think of the sheep. They are stupid. They can't understand. That's why they follow him. They're fools. What's that tell you about the heart of these shepherds? Pardon? They're prideful. How do they feel about the sheep? Do they love the sheep? They think they're stupid. They can't understand anything about God. But as for this crowd, you can hear them snarling. Oh, these people going up to worship at the temple, they don't even know what they're doing. And they can't understand theology. As for this crowd, this accursed, ignorant crowd. And Jesus is going to say, very soon, the good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. That's a difference of a shepherd. The ignorant, accursed crowd, they snarl. And Jesus dies for that crowd. That's a huge difference. These are the builders of Israel who reject the stone. They are of no significance spiritually. And they say, in their pride, look at these idiot people. They all follow after him like a Pied Piper. They couldn't have said that. That came later. But that's the way they follow him. But look at us. Have any of us believed? Have any of the authorities or the Pharisees believed in him? And amazingly enough, somebody over here goes, I have something to say. Who's that? It's Nicodemus. The question is, have any of us believed? Good. Very good timing. That's exactly what he did. And can you see this scene? Have any of us believed? Yes. What do you have to say, Nicodemus? What's the heart of Nicodemus doing right now? Have you ever been in a situation? Boom, 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 boom. You could see his robe. Boom, 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 boom. What's on your mind, Nicodemus? What did Nicodemus want to say? What's the question? Have any of us believed? What did he want to say? I believed. There's another guy down the other end, didn't even clear his throat. What's his name? Joseph of Arimathea. They will meet, the two of them will meet at the foot of the cross and find out they were both believers. It says of them, they were secret disciples for fear of the Jews, scared the liver out of you, because you'd be put out of the synagogue. When he heals the blind man, the next page, that's exactly what's going to happen. And here's this guy, Nicodemus, who's a big man. He's one of the Sanhedrin, and so is Joseph. And they kept meeting with these guys. They were having turmoil in their heart the whole time, but they wouldn't speak up. And finally, this question comes, where's the prisoner? Oh, nobody ever spoke like that. Oh, you're just like the crowds. We sent you out, and have any of us believed? And that hit him like a sledgehammer, you know, and he had an instant knee-jerk response of confession. Yeah, what's he do? Now, what he says isn't bad. Does our law judge a man without first giving him a hearing and learning what he does? Is that a good thing to say? That's good. That's a nice legal appeal that let's do it the way the law says to do. Let's have an honest trial and all the rest of them. By now, Nicodemus should have known they're not interested in an honest trial. They had already been plotting to kill him. They already came up with a phony explanation of it all. Nicodemus and Joseph would have been involved in the discussion. How are we going to explain this? I got an idea. Let's explain it. He does it by Beelzebub, these supernatural things. That's a good idea. Why didn't they say that's a bad idea? That's a lie. Because they were fearful. Any of you ever been fearful in witnessing? We have all been fearful. It's great this thing is in the Bible. We value Nicodemus and Joseph. Think of that. They took the body down from the cross, and Joseph puts him in the body in his own tomb. They're great people, but they were weak at this point. We probably all would have been. What he said was good, but it wasn't what he really wanted to say. And when he sat down, have you ever been this? Oh, Lord, I didn't do it. I tried. Didn't come out very clearly. You know, the emotions of all this for him. And they snap at him. He says, does our law judge a man? No, are you from Galilee too? Are you one of his boys? You don't talk like a Galilean. Nothing good's ever come out of Galilee. That's another great thing to say. That shows what they think about the people they represent. They have written off the whole Galilean province. It's like saying, yeah. But, are you from Galilee too? Oh man, you're up there where they grow corn. What do you know, Nicodemus? No prophet ever comes out of Galilee. True or false? That's false. Can you name a prophet out of Galilee? Jonah. That's not bad. I think it's Jonah. Yeah. It's not even true. So how are things going? Well, what am I going to do? Okay, there's the bottom line there. Oh, let's turn the page to paragraph 118. Oh, wait a minute. 117, 119. They must have made a mistake here. Here's the water pouring ceremony. The water pouring ceremony. And there's a lamp lighting ceremony. What's this paragraph in between here? Where's 118? Somebody hit they changed font on us. Somebody hit the wrong button. What's this all about? Pardon? That is exactly right. A very good answer. Textual criticism problem here. You know when we threw out that verse in the angel coming down stirring up the water? Same problem, only it's a big chunk of a passage here. It's this whole thing. Nobody's got enough courage to say it doesn't belong. Everybody preaches on this. And I said back then, as I say now, I keep this one in. When I come to those kind of things, does it belong or does it not belong, I judge it by the context, by the sound or the ring of truth that it has. This is exactly what Jesus would do. This is a true story. This is part of the text. And it's a great part of the text. This is a wonderful, wonderful story. These Pharisees are so ticked. They're going to say, you know what we'll do? There's this bad woman down the street. I want to give somebody here, they had to do this. I want to give somebody here an assignment to go down and arrange to do you know what with her. And then we're going to burst in with all the video cameras and take a picture of it. And you're going to be stuck, and we're going to stick Jesus with this whole question. What do you do to a person taken in adultery. Now, which of you guys would like to volunteer? And evidently somebody did. You cannot have adultery by yourself. You understand that? Do I have to explain that to you? This woman is taken in adultery. In the very act. Well, how do you do that? So they throw her down. What's missing here when they throw the woman down at the feet of Jesus? What? Where's the guy? And there's this perpetual problem that we are aware of, that the women are always guilty, the guys aren't. And so it was. And they put out this proposition. Okay, Jesus, you're so smart. Moses said somebody taken in adultery should be stoned. She was caught. Here are the pictures. Now, what do you say? And guess what he said? Nothing. He just starts to write.